of WeAreChange.org here in New York City. And of course, the news just came in that the FCC got rid of net neutrality just moments ago. Yeah, they got rid of it. To talk about that, of course, I have journalist, independent media, Tim Pool. I know my audience doesn't like him. His audience doesn't like me. We don't like each other, but we collaborate. As you know, it's a very busy city. I don't know about that, but there's been a lot of fake news about net neutrality from the left and from the right. I wanted to bring on Tim to talk about the exact ramifications of what is happening and what you need to know about net neutrality. So Tim, we're seeing a lot of things from the left and right. What just happened officially?
I'm not actually following the breaking news. I can talk to you about some of the misconceptions, and I think that's the most important part. First, Ajit Pai is trying to revoke the Title II regulations, right? These went into effect in 2015. So essentially you can say, to some degree, we're going to see the internet return to what it was like in 2014. There were some issues, but, you know, we'll figure it out, I suppose. A lot of people argued that the FCC took care of those problems, but the problem still existed. So you have the right saying, hey, we took care of it. You have the left saying, oh, but the problems existed, both inflaming whichever side benefits them. But here, there's a few important things I want to bring up. Everybody thinks they know everything about net neutrality, and that's one of the big problems. I see people on the right saying, this is exactly, the left is lying to everybody. I see the right is lying to everybody. The reality is, it's an extremely complicated issue. There's one point that I really want to bring up, something I brought up earlier, and that's one of the goals of repealing net neutrality, at least as they're describing it. Net neutrality, kind of, the definition changes as time goes on, is that the ISPs want to charge companies like Google and Facebook and the users like you and me, right? So we got to pay for our internet, and then they want Google to also pay on the other end. So one of the things I bring up to people is, do you know why credit card companies offer perks, point rewards, frequent flyer miles? It's because they want to attract more people to their card because merchants have to pay. When you swipe your credit card at a store, the merchant pays a percentage fee for that service. That's what the ISPs want to do. So they're possibly, in certain areas where there is market competition for the internet, you might see your prices go down. But across the board, it's going to stifle smaller companies. It's likely that it could. See, what will happen is Google can absolutely afford to pay those fees. But can alternative media, right? Can WeAreChange afford to pay any fees that might come up? Because, hey, if we're going to deliver WeAreChange content to our users, it costs this much. And so this is a potential risk to smaller channels. There's some other stuff, but...
Yeah, they're saying their official side from the ISP side is that we're going to create a super fast lane and a normal lane for everyone. And they're saying, no, we're not going to throttle you. But then people are coming back and saying, why would you fight for the right to throttle people with this new kind of repealing of the old net neutrality legislation? And we've seen a lot of fake news on the left and, of course, the right. The left is saying that you're going to have to be paying an extra $10.99 to use Twitter, $12.99 to use Facebook. That's all completely fake news. That's not exactly how it's going to work. It's going to work exactly like you described it. I do see what many people, this is kind of like a left centrist issue, are bringing up, especially with bigger companies having more resources to pay for higher bandwidth, having an unfair edge on smaller companies like yourself and myself. People on the right are saying, well, this is, there is no open and free internet anyway. People get censored left and right on Twitter and Facebook. Screw these guys, let's pass net neutrality. And I'm like, wait, the ramifications are a lot bigger here. The right is also saying that this needs to be a free market kind of country, that the government doesn't need to get involved in it. But that's also fake on so many other levels. What kind of fake news are you seeing, and how are you deconstructing it yourself?
I mean, dude, half the time, I don't know. It's so hard. I mean, look, you look at the front page of Reddit. It's all in support of net neutrality, and you don't know what's true and what isn't. You see people like big YouTubers posting, I don't want to have to pay $10, for the cost of porn or something like that. And that's what people really believe. They believe that the internet service providers are trying to increase the cost of the customers. Well, I got an important point to make about that fake news. If the internet service providers, who you claim have a monopoly, want to charge you more for the internet, they don't need a special law to do that. They have a monopoly. They can do it now. So technically, in areas where the ISPs do have a monopoly, I wouldn't expect to see the prices go up or down. That makes no sense. They just want to charge Google and Facebook. They want to double dip. So it's really bad for areas that are monopolized. I think everybody is aware that monopolies are really, really bad. Yeah. But there's one thing people need to consider, especially those that are watching alternative news. Here's one of my predictions, and it's complicated. I could be wrong, but with the provisions we've heard, AT&T is going to buy Time Warner, right? That's what they're talking about doing. We'll see if it happens. I may be late on the news. I don't know what's going on, but let's say they own CNN. So what they do is they say, if you buy AT&T, you get our basic internet package, which includes basic apps like Facebook and Twitter and CNN. But if you want access to wearechange.org, that requires the premium internet package. So essentially they go, look, we have a cheap package for those. It's more affordable, and it includes the apps that we provide on the phone. And if you want regular internet like everyone else has, that costs $40 a month. So what ends up happening? Luke, you read an article. It's really, really important. It's on your website. Someone sees that and says, oh my God, Luke, you broke this huge story. They send it to their mom. Mom, please read this. And she goes, oh, I don't have one of those packages. I just have CNN. Is it on CNN? No, it's not.
Or it would just start loading very slowly. And there are about 100 million people in the United States who live in an area where the internet service provider is monopolized, and they don't have any choices in the region. As well as the fact that the U.S. government spent $400 billion of tax-paying dollars for fiber optics to be built all across the United States.
Was that a tax? I think that was a tax break. I'm not exactly sure how that went. I've heard some people say it was a tax break, that they said, okay, Verizon, we're gonna write off this amount of money, so you're technically getting a deal from the government. Yeah. Some people have, you see the post on Reddit, and it's like the U.S. government gave $400 billion to Verizon or to ISPs, but then from the right, it was a tax incentive. They didn't have to do anything. Yeah.
Regardless, it's taking away income that would have been there as tax that isn't there anymore. And if you're giving something off, or if you're actually giving it, you're still, I think it's still along the same lines. So with all that, I believe kind of the free market aspect is kind of null and void, since the government have been so involved with the ISPs and the internet companies, colluding with them, as well as the other factor that they work on spying on everyone and watching everyone and selling off your private information. And I think the bigger kind of story here is that we've seen a huge response from the people saying, we don't want net neutrality to be finished. We don't want this to happen. There's been such a surge of people demanding this, and the FCC today acted pretty much like that cat in that one meme video where he hits the bottle and the owner says no, and then they hits the bottles again and just throws the bottle off the thing and saying, screw it, we're just going to do what the hell we want. And that's exactly what they did.
I should have thought, right? First, let me say, I don't consider myself an expert. I could be wrong about all of this. But what it sounds like to me when you hear these stories is that the government paved the way for this massive monopoly that the ISPs have, and now they're trying to use the free market argument to repeal regulations that helped these companies become monopolies. Yep. And now they're trying to come to the right and be like, oh, everybody, let's bring the free market back. And there's no competition, so now we're going to cut the chains off, and these companies are going to be free to get worse. Yep. So it's kind of like, is net neutrality a moot point, right? Does it obstruct the free market? Maybe, but getting rid of net neutrality because you want a free market isn't going to do anything if there's already a monopoly. But then at the same time, it's like government regulation on top of monopoly is really bad. I think the question we need to be asking instead of net neutrality is, how do we deal with these monopolies? Because monopolization of power in any form, corporate or government, is a big problem for everybody.
The government is just a bunch of communistic capitalists who take advantage of the certain scenario and their positions when it works out for them, and they can be easily bought and sold. And I think this is the bigger lesson here of net neutrality. No matter what the people want, the government and their interests are still going to do whatever the hell they want. Just like a few months ago when they ruled in Congress that the ISPs can now take your private internet history and sell it to third parties. Everyone was against that. Everyone, right now, the majority of people are against this latest move by the FCC. It doesn't matter. And I think it shows a continual trend of government not giving a damn about you. Any last words?
I think what you just said is spot on. Big corporations don't care about you. The government doesn't care about you. They don't care about your votes. They don't care about what you're doing so long as they can convince you to spend your money in their direction. And if there's two ways to do that. They can promise you good services and be a good service for your community, or they can dominate through monopoly and then, like they did on South Park, start opening up their shirts and rubbing their nipples saying, oh, too bad. South Park nailed it.
They did it many times. Again, it's not really left or right. It's really just about the buttholes in the top and everyone else getting screwed over. Watch Tim's video where I did it on his channel. I'll explain that whole analogy that happened there. Regardless, if you guys enjoyed this video, found it useful, not partisan in any way, not butthole-ish in any way on the left or right, share it with your friends and family members. Deeply thank you to all the people who sponsor us and donate us to keep us running. I love you guys. Stay tuned for more.